and I just wanted to thank you guys for coming today. We're going to be having a great topic from stress to strength, and it really applies to all of us women, right? So once we hit a certain age, things start to change, and I'm sure everybody in this room has started to notice that. So today they're going to be giving you some great information, but what is information without transformation? So at the end of this, one thing that we do when we come out to the community is we offer a special for everybody to come in and get their nervous systems checked. So we will offer that at the end. And just a little testimonial for myself is I've been in chiropractic for many years, and I've seen transformation with many people through my children, and nothing really ever set with me until about 6 years ago. I had my last child, which I have 5 children, and my hormones were all out of whack. I was working 40 plus hours a week. I couldn't lose weight. I had weight loss resistance. I had emotional roller coaster. And I was luckily able to take a step back from my position, and over the last 3 or 4 years really implement a lot of systems, including our 5 essentials, which they'll share with you, which was the 5 essentials and fasting, complete hormone reset, and as I grow into premenopause, I'm healthy doing that. I've lost 65 pounds. It hasn't come off easily. It's like 2 pounds a month, but it is possible. And so they're going to provide you with tools to be able to transform your lives. And if you guys come into our office, there's amazing things that we can do. And I just want you to open your hearts, really listen. And these little forms here allow you to fill it out and let us know what's going on with you specifically. None of this will be shared. And then also, if you can go through this first page and circle anything that might apply to you. And as he's talking, you might circle more things. But at the very end, we want to make sure that everything that you learned today, you're able to apply it into your lives. So, give it up for Dr. Doss and Dr. Sydney.
Thank you. Before we get started, I do have a request. Could we train which doors open just so we can...
Oh, absolutely. We will do that. Okay. We can do the door set. So here. We got the door set, yeah. It's all good. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. All right. As we're getting started here, I just wanted to introduce a little bit about ourselves. We've had the opportunity to do dozens of talks on various topics, and this one is of more importance now than ever before. There's a lot of science that has been done on the human body, but most of that science actually pertains to the male body, the male physiology, right? So as we're starting to step forward into this new paradigm of being aware of female physiology and the science that we've done and its impact on that, we just wanted to incorporate a little bit of that. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time today, so a lot of this is going to be an overview of the simple things that we can do in order to improve your life. So as for me, my name is Dr. Doss. I'm currently the owner of Discover Chiropractic. I had the ability to purchase it, take it over last year. So we just had our first year of being open under my watch, and I couldn't have done it without my amazing team, and with Dr. Sydney as well. And whatever you'd like to.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Sydney. I want to say thank you guys for coming out and spending your lunch here. I know there's a lot you could be doing. Thank you to Sahara and Candace for setting this up. It's amazing. And like Dr. Doss said, we're super excited about this because we have the majority of our patient base is actually female, and what they do for their community, their workplace, their families is so much. It's always go, go, go. And like he's talked about before, most of the information out in the sphere of how to take care of yourself pertains to men. And our bodies do work so differently, right? So we're really excited to start off this presentation, kind of talk about the nuances and how we can improve our lives so that we can help our families in our workplace and all these other aspects of our life. So without further ado.
So, we're talking about from stress to strength, right? One thing that we just want to make clear is that our concept of strength is not about pushing harder than ever before, right? It's about regulating better. And in terms of regulation, people might think, it's about being able to be in that homeostatic give and take. But in order to just simplify what that means, it's about having the energetic capabilities to bring what is required to each situation, right? And how many people woke up this morning and felt like they might have been a little bit tired when you woke up, right? Definitely. Or feel like you might have been in a situation recently where you're like, okay, I do not have time for this. And it's those signs, like in our everyday lives, that are showing us, we need a little bit more of that ability to regulate. So the first thing we want to do is we want to define what high functioning actually looks like, right? So it doesn't look like hustling constantly, right? There are seasons in our lives where we need to push a little bit harder, but that shouldn't be the constant underlying basis of your life. It definitely doesn't look like burnout, right? Struggling to wake up every morning and making sure that everybody else's needs are met before your own, that's not high functioning. It doesn't look like surviving on caffeine, right? Trust me, I've been there, right? And definitely not neglecting your needs in order to make sure that everybody else is taken care of before you. Because if you're pouring from an empty cup, then what's going to happen? You're going to run out sooner than later. What it does look like is sustainable energy throughout the day, right? It looks like emotional clarity, consistent output without collapse. And in order to have that, that means you need to have the energetic reserves capable of doing that. And it looks like flow state, right? Life shouldn't be such a strain or a struggle, especially for women being the most beautiful, intuitive beings that you are. Flow state is one of the amazing superpowers that I believe that women have, and just constantly being able to have things pour out of you in such a way that is creative, that is amazing. That is what life should look like. So the real root of where flow state comes from, or where being high functioning comes from, is the nervous system. It controls every single expression of your body. In fact, it's the only reason that you can feel the things that you feel, taste the things that you taste, smell the things that the nervous system is what connects your consciousness to reality around you, right? So for your biology, it looks like your hormonal expression of your nervous system tone, or your circadian rhythm. It's your daily nervous system entrainment, that beautiful cycle that goes on a day-to-day basis, or your menstrual cycle, right? Your monthly circadian rhythm. And that is your monthly nervous system recalibration. It also looks like joy, your parasympathetic activation strategy, versus your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight strategy, right? So when we talk about the basis of the parasympathetic or the sympathetic nervous system, we're actually talking about the power of the vagus nerve. Now, some of these concepts that I'm going to be talking about are actually adapted from a dear friend of mine. His name is Dr. Jamal Frooster. He does a series called Providing for the Provider, and his main audience is healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, who are stressed out, who are tired, who have been giving so much to everybody else that they don't have time to take care of themselves. What other population does that sound like? Right? So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about these concepts, I encourage you to look at him. His Instagram is Dr. Jamal Frooster, and he does a series of talks if you are interested. But we're talking about different levels of the power of the vagus nerve, also known as different levels of engagement or arousal, right? AKA your window of tolerance, right? What are you capable of handling without flying off the handle or completely shutting down? It's that sweet spot, right? So when you're in that sympathetic or in that fight or flight state, we call this hyper arousal, right? And not just fight or flight, but there's more research that's coming out, especially for the feminine population, that this can also look like a freeze or a fawn response. So just completely shutting down or feeling like you need to look around and take care of the needs of who's closest to you, or the person or the concept or the group that is actually causing the stress. So it could also feel like overwhelm, anger, irritability, or panic, right? Now, what we're looking for is that regulation that lies in your ventral vagal aspect of your nervous system. This is where you're calm, you're present, you're engaged, you're clear, you're alert. This is where your creativity and your flow state lies, where things just pour out of you and they're just beautiful and they're amazing and they're really true to self. And also, on the opposite side of that fight or flight, we're looking at your dorsal vagal or your hypoarousal. This is what it looks like when you're shut down, when you're disconnected. When you feel isolated, you might be feeling shame, depression, numbness, guilt. If you feel like any of these things resonate with you, then we need to take stock of where we're at personally, of what state of arousal that you're in and how your nervous system is functioning. Now, if we click to the next slide there, we can talk about the reason why your nervous system might be functioning in that way, right? Every single person on this planet has needs. And if your needs are not being met, your body is going to respond in specific ways. So the concept of universal needs, also termed as Mrs. Clausius, right? All of these things break down into this anagram, but the needs are meaning, right? Do you feel like you're living on purpose and in alignment? Right? We've got recreation. There's an importance to having fun and in the process of feeling alive. That is an important aspect to having a regulated nervous system. If you're not having enough fun in your life, you're not going to be able to balance the things that you need to do. We've got sustenance of your mind, body, and spirit. Are you eating the right foods? Are you intaking the right things into your mind? Everything that you deposit into your system becomes a part of who you are. We talk about social media, all of the news that comes out, all of the fear, all of the aggression, all of the anger, all of the comparison. If you're exposed to those things for a long enough period of time, it's eventually going to start to create some wear and tear inside of your nervous system. The C in Mrs. Clausius stands for creativity. It's a necessary component and a great way of interpreting your parasympathetic tone, right? Love is the glue that holds the universe together and perpetuates life. Without love, right, everybody needs that inside of the universal needs. We've got autonomy. This is the divine gift of choice, being able to act with how you truly feel, right? Understanding empathy, and it's intellectualizing versus feeling one another. So you can think about something, you can have knowledge of something, and that's intellectual. But if you have empathy, right, you're actually feeling somebody, you're meeting them where they're at, energetically, emotionally, and that creates a deeper level of understanding, and that's that basis of understanding versus knowledge. Then we've got safety, right, within your relationships, within your environment, right, and within yourself. This is an extremely key factor. A lot of the women in my life have expressed to me that this is a need that isn't met for women on a regular basis. Your sense of belonging. Community is the X factor in almost every type of disease, every ailment, mental health, addiction. A lot of these things happen because people don't feel a sense of community. In fact, for addiction specifically, there was a research study that was done on mice who were addicted to cocaine, and they tried to give them all kinds of drugs that were able to break the addiction. They tried to provide them with more food. They tried to provide them with more comfort. The one thing that steered them away from using drugs was being in the presence of other loving mice. Interesting. We've got our identity and significance. This is crucial awareness of your value of self, right? Not just from an outside-in perspective, but how are you viewing yourself? How do you view your identity? How do you feel like you're valuable or you contribute to your community or your situation? And we've got your attachment. Now, this is a little bit different from community because you can have community with people, but if you're not being a conscious being who is co-regulating with somebody, right? You don't feel like you have a best friend or that familial connection, then things are going to change. You ultimately start to feel alone, you feel isolated. And then lastly, we have authenticity. Right? This also ties in with your creativity, but your human need to organically express yourself is extremely key. If you're tied into a situation where you feel like you have to fit into a box and you're more of a triangle, you do that for long enough, you're going to start to shave down your sides. And that will eventually start to overwhelm your nervous system.
So, with all of that being said, we're going to talk about basically the tools to get that way. Now, I want to start off with my story because I'm sure we have some other type A women in this room where we have to do everything, right? You want to be the best at your job, the best in your household, you want to be the girl that gets the guy, you want it all, right? And this was me back when I was doing it all, pretty much. same outfit, different person. But when I first started working at the office, I had just gotten out of school, was feeling kind of on top of the world, got my dream job. I was working out, doing CrossFit every single day. I was eating all the things that I was being told to eat. I don't know if any of you guys are self-help people, but I spend a lot of time on YouTube, right? How to become the best version of myself. Well, I was taking all those hacks, those more man-driven testosterone hacks, and I was doing everything. I thought I was doing everything right. But basically what had happened was over the course of about 6 to 8 months, I gained 30 pounds. I was miserable. My hair was falling out. I was so stressed. I could barely make it through the day without taking naps. And I was so confused and lost because I had done every single thing by the book that I was told to do. Now, me on the other side, this is Dr. Doss and I after we did our most recent fasting class. But I flipped everything upside down, and I'll talk about how to do that in a second. But I learned about female biology and how to use that to my advantage. And what that looked like was slowing down, figuring out what intuitively is right for me. How am I different from other people? How is my life stress different than other people? And what I found, go ahead to the next slide. So there's a couple different ways that our nervous system reacts, right? I'm sure a lot of us in this room have felt these things. The most obvious thing is going to be anxiety, or you feel uneasy with your life. And maybe on the outside, again, you could be sitting in my shoes where everything looked perfect. I had the best job, great car, great house, everything was perfect. But my anxiety was never ending, heart palpitations. I woke up and was not excited to be awake, right? PMS, things like this are reproductive organs. We were talking about last night, there's actually new evidence coming out that all of our reproductive organs have a similar neurological connection as our brains, right? So when we're stressed, when we're in fight or flight, this is why we have PMS, this is why we have endometriosis, this is why we have all of these things that seem to go hand in hand. Fatigue is a huge one. Again, we're designed to have ultimate energy. We're designed to be able to get through the day at high energy. We shouldn't be sleepy except for the times we're supposed to be sleepy. Irritability, this is a big one for me when I know that I'm off, is any little thing. I personally don't have children, but I see a lot of our patients that do, and sometimes I caught myself getting home super exhausted the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, women do this and have children. I might punt that kid out a window, but I'll work on that by the time I get to that point. But when we're regulated, right, we're thinking clear, like Dr. Doss talked about, we're in that flow state where we get through the day and we're like, wow, that was a great day. I feel good, I feel accomplished, stable mood. I'm going to talk a lot about our cycles. I know for me, before I figured out my cycle, I was moody 2 weeks out of the month, right? And I just had accepted that. And I was one of those people that was like, how unfortunate is it that as a woman, we have to be in that dysregulated state for basically half of our life, right? Before I figured out how to work with that cycle. And so we can predict our cycles and we can have a stronger recovery. We can bounce back from when things throw us off. I know another good check for myself is when things just will knock me out for the rest of the day. Like one thing will happen. For instance, today I got a student loan email that I did not want to see. When I'm in my dysregulated function, the rest of my day is over, right? I'm freaking out. I'm on my email all day trying to figure out when I'm clear and stable, it's just another blip, right? So go ahead to the next screen. So I want to talk a little bit about optimization versus biohacking. Biohacking is a huge word right now, especially, again, if you guys are watching podcasts, YouTube, reading books, right? Everyone wants a biohack. The red light, the cold plunge, the sauna, the working out a certain way, right? We see these guys, I think his name is Brian Johnson, the guy who wants to live forever or whatever. And it's always something new, right? And again, most of these things actually work against female biology. We want to honor our rhythms and our cycles in different things. We should push harder and rest harder in different certain phases of our lives. Whereas biohacking actually overrides these signals, puts us into more of a stress state, especially on depending when we're doing these things. It forces our output, it forces our input, and it often increases our stress. And a lot of the things that cause our issues is stress, right? I tell people all the time, our office would not exist if people were not as stressed, because stress is kind of the first thing that degrades the rest of our health over time. So you can't outhack a dysregulated nervous system, but you can work with it.
Let me get some snaps if you feel like that any of that resonates. So we're talking about different rhythms, right? So circadian rhythm is one of the most powerful tools that you can use for the feminine biology. And it's so simple, but it's something that Western society especially has steered us from so heavily. So this is what we're talking about in terms of our daily regulation. So your daily regulation or your daily nervous system reset, right? You have the time when you're going to be doing things with your cortisol levels. Your cortisol spikes in the morning. It's what's supposed to get you up. It's what's supposed to get you ready, right? That's also known as your stress hormone. Should spike for certain periods of times, just for a small amount of time, a couple minutes max, right? If your cortisol is staying spiked, that means that your body has stopped adapting to your stressful situations. So it's supposed to spike, say if you're walking down the street and there's a pack of rabid dogs that you see down the street and you need to hightail it out of there, that's an appropriate cortisol spike, right? But if you know you got a bunch of paperwork for you at the office, you got a phone call with somebody that you really just don't like talking to, and you got a whole bunch of other things that you need to do that day, and your cortisol is acting like that pack of rabid dogs is acting heels all the time, that means your body is not adapted, okay? Your melatonin release is a really, really important timing that's supposed to happen. This is what makes you sleepy, right? It's what gets your body ready for bed, to wind down. Your insulin sensitivity is what your flow of digestion, right? Your hunger, how your energy levels are released looks like. We're also talking about your blood sugar regulation in comparison to that as well. When you're talking about you're lowering your inflammation or your inflammatory levels, period, right? A normal part of your circadian rhythm, you're going to have different inflammatory levels at different times, right? Inflammation isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, when it's up here all the time, this is where chronic stress, right? This is where autoimmunity, this is where chronic disease starts to happen. And also your mood stability is reflected by your circadian rhythm as well. So here's your strategic cortisol, right? You start in the morning, you want to have your healthy morning spike. During that time, you want to get some light exposure. Getting out to sunlight as soon as possible, getting it into your eyes, it helps your pituitary gland actually start to regulate your hormones, okay? Hydration, getting not just water, but also making sure that you get some salt in there, some minerals. Minerals are one of the most key and important things that are starting to be lower in our standard American diet that are absolutely important for not just anybody, but the female body specifically. If you don't have minerals, your hair can fall out, right? You can start to go gray in advance. Your body's energy system is going to be dysregulated. Your skin is going to feel tighter. Your inflammation is going to go up, and your body is not going to be able to pass toxins out of your system. It'll start to accumulate as well. You want to make sure that you're getting good movement in the morning. It's really, really key. Waking up your body like you're waking up your mind is amazing. And that movement doesn't have to look crazy. It can just be for wherever you're at your current time, whatever your current capabilities are. That can look like stretching, some light yoga. It can look like going for a jog. Or if you're just really feeling pumped up that day, it can look like going to Barry's for their 5 a.m. class and running a mile and a half. Now, personally, that's not me. That's Dr. Cindy. But hey, you know, her nervous system functions in a different way, and she honors that, right? In contrast, it looks like getting coffee before your sunlight or your hydration. A fun fact about coffee, you're actually not supposed to have caffeine inside of your system until 90 minutes after you wake up. It has a half-life of about 8 hours. So that means that in order for half of the amount of caffeine that you have in your system, or in order for the amount of caffeine that you have in your system to be reduced in half, takes 8 hours. So you should have coffee about 90 minutes after you wake up, and technically your last cup should be before 8:30 in the morning. I mean, now, if we're not doing those things and we're not getting all the other stuff, like the sunlight and the movement, right? You're creating an artificial stress spike in your body every day. And not only that, you become reliant on it because coffee actually doesn't give you energy. What it does is it suppresses your tired signals. Cool. And this is what our afternoon and evening down regulations looks like so that you can have the maximum strength and your best performance. In your afternoon, you want your stable glucose levels, you want your light movements, and you want to start adjusting your tasks to fit your energy levels. Now, the best time if you are going to have a sweet treat, right? Technically, it is in the afternoon because then you will be able to burn it off through your system.
I do.
Yeah. And so, dessert is a trick. Dessert is a trick. It's trying to get you to kind of take yourself out of that area. But if you have that glucose spike right before bed, right, it's going to throw you off your circadian rhythm. It's going to affect your hormones, your ability to sleep. Same thing with alcohol. And when you get to the evening, you want to start to minimize things, right? You want to be a little bit lighter. You want to do some breath work to increase your parasympathetic activation. And breath work doesn't have to be crazy, right? It can be as simple as this. Everybody take a deep breath in through your nose. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds. And let it out for 7 seconds. Who in here felt a response inside their body? We get some snaps, you feel a little bit more relaxed. Right? Just a couple of those each day can change the direction of how your nervous system is functioning. So when we tie in, like your circadian disruption is directly linked to emotional instability. But when we start to live in a circadian balance, all these amazing things will happen. You'll start having more energy than ever before. Weight loss will start to happen, right? You'll start to have more mental focus and more tolerance, right? For that phone call that you know that you really don't want to pick up, but you got to get it done anyway. And this is how the beauty starts to shift from stress to strength.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do this with our cycles. So you guys are probably familiar, right, that every day is not quite the same as a woman. We have 4 different phases that occur in our cycle. Now I did link in menopause with the more luteal phase, so for those of you that are in that perimenopause, menopause, that is kind of the phase that you stay in over time. But the human body is so amazing that it uses these cycles in order to help us achieve when we need to achieve and help us rest when we need to rest. And go ahead on to the next slide. Because I like to compare the different cycles to basically the seasons of the year. So you can think about them in the different ways as they come, right? So our menstrual phase, right, where bleeding is going to be more like the winter. And it makes sense because you feel bloated, you want to cuddle up, you want that chocolate, you want people to get the heck away from you. But this is when a time where you should be more reflective. This is where we're going to have that more high parasympathetic tone, which means our bodies want to rest and digest. This is the time also that if we are in that more rest and digest, but we push it really hard as far as different things that activate cortisol, we're going to have a pushback on our body. Now our folliculars, when we come out, we're more in that spring. We haven't quite hit that ovulation, but we're super stoked. We're not bleeding anymore. Things are starting to look up. Our dopamine is rising. This is when you feel a little bit more creative. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm in those later stages of my period, I feel like I can't think, I can't come up with new ideas. I'm sure a lot of your guys' work requires a lot of creativity, and that is just a little bit harder in that time. Now, as you come up, you're feeling really good. Now, we hit ovulation, which is more of that summer. You can think of this as when you feel a little bit more snatched, your skin's glowing, your communication actually peaks in this time. It's easier for you to go out and talk to people, meet new people. You feel that exuberant confidence. And then our luteal is more that fall. This is the week before your period where you're starting to feel everything kind of collapse. We're a little bit more anxious. I know when it comes to fall, just in the year, the holidays are starting to come up, right? You're starting to kind of look ahead, see what's on the midst, maybe a little bit more anxiety. But definitely this is where our stress sensitivity is really, really high. Now, just a quick story on top of this. You guys saw that I did lose a lot of weight over about 6 months. Now, we talk a lot about fasting in our practice and how to work with that to kind of regulate everything. But one mistake I made when I was fasting is I went at it with a type A lens at first, which meant I'm going to fast every single week. This is working great. I'm losing weight. I'm feeling good. Well, when I started fasting in more that luteal phase, or when I was bleeding especially, had absolutely negative side effects. One thing about fasting, we talk about, there's like a kind of ego death perspective in that. Girl, I was like depressed. My hair started falling out. Again, like your body, we don't work with our bodies, it works against us. And so it's important that we know this information so we can use it to our benefit. Now once I've switched it up and I honor those seasons, I let myself indulge in more carbs, I eat that chocolate, maybe I have that glass of wine, and these other phases, I actually lose more weight, I look better, I feel better, and things work, right? We're gonna talk about how none of this stuff works with an unstable nervous system, right? And in order to create that stability, there's a couple things you need to do. Go ahead. So this just kind of shows the different hormones, how they spike throughout these different phases. Now, one thing I want to point out with this is this looks like a crazy graph, right? These things are going all over the place, and this is why we can feel crazy if things are not where they need to be, right? When we look more, let's see, so say let's look at our optimum prime time right here at the top of our estrogen peak. This is when we're ovulating. This is where everything is feeling good. We're on top of the world. We also get this little testosterone spike. This is why it's such a good time to do that more high intensity workouts when we're in that more like coming off your period. More cardio, higher weights, things like that, and you have that extra energy for it. Everything is feeling really good over here, and then you see it crashes kind of right before you get on your period. And this is why, again, it's easier to have a little bit of that more mood instability. As progesterone rises, go ahead into the next slide. So progesterone is one of the hormones that actually promotes more of that inner consolidation, rest, and reflection. And it is so high during those later stages that, again, it's so important. So this is when we want to be doing yoga, Pilates, walking, journaling, things to kind of support growth, versus our high estrogen phases is when we want to expand growth, change, do those higher intensity exercises. Now, he'll talk about a little bit in a second, but we want to make sure that our food choices match these as well. Now, the way that I like to think about the food choices is that in that more our fall and winter phases, right, our luteal into our bleeding phases, you actually can indulge in the things that you like, the higher carbs, the dark chocolates, the sugars. Your body actually uses that more in those times. So there is a positive, because even when we're kind of feeling down in our caves, right, we can eat the sweet potatoes, we can eat the chocolate. And when we're in that kind of higher energy phase, this is where we really want to lock in on protein. This is when our body is usually making more building blocks. So we want to make sure that we support that as well.
Cool. So, like she said, I'm going to be talking about fueling the regulated female body. So we talked about your blood sugar crashes, right? How that starts to spike your cortisol, that can boost your irritability, your anxiety, and your sleep disruption. So we really want to emphasize, first and foremost, protein is super, super key. That gives you stable, regulated energy for 8 hours at a time as it passes through your system, right? Now your fiber is going to help with your intestinal bacteria, which ultimately 90% of your serotonin, that is your body's joy hormone, and 50% of your dopamine, which is your pleasure hormone, is made inside of your intestines. So unless you have the proper fuel for the good bacteria, which is going to be your fiber, then you're not going to be able to make those hormones as effectively, and you're not going to be able to feel the best that you can feel, right? And then we know that your essential fatty acids help to stabilize your nervous system, not just stabilize, but they actually make up large portions of your nervous system so that you can send the signals that you need to, you can have the neurotransmitters that you need to, and like I said, minerals are so key, right? Your trace minerals are something that we do not get enough of. Some of them function in hundreds to thousands of different bodily processes, and we don't get what we need from our standard American diet, from the tap water that we may or may not be drinking, and from even the food that we're eating, if it's organic, right? The way that we farm the soil in the United States has changed the mineral content in the soil over years. So the amount of magnesium that we used to get 40 to 100 years ago has dropped by some levels, even say 60 to 90%. Magnesium is functional in over 300 different chemical processes inside of your body. So that's why it's so important that we need to take minerals. And insulin as well, your glucose stability is directly linked to your emotional stability. So for your follicular and your ovulation phases, we have a slightly lighter eating tolerance. Like she said, we can have that extra snack that you want, or some of the chocolates, some of the sugars. Your body can support that. right? Higher carbohydrate tolerance. In fact, your body needs carbohydrates during that time. It's not the time for you to be dieting super hard, and it's not the time, certainly, for you to be fasting. During your luteal phase, you do have an increased caloric needs. You do need more food. More protein is the way to go, more magnesium, and more complex carbohydrates. So we're not talking about like simple sugars during that time. We need things that are good for you. We're talking about our fruits, right? Talking about sweet potatoes over regular potatoes, ideally. And then they also have a higher fiber content as well. So your sweet potatoes and your green bananas really help during that time. And then during your menstrual cycle, you need more iron support, right? Something that isn't commonly known about iron supplements is that you're not supposed to be constantly taking them all the time, right? If you find yourself classically low on iron, something that we should also look at is your exposure to other heavy metals, which unfortunately can come through your water or some of the foods that we eat, or just being in traffic, right? You're breathing all that exhaustion, and that can have an effect on your body. We want your warm foods, and you want something that's going to be a little bit more gentle on your digestion. Excuse me, I said ovulation, I said menstrual for ovulation. I switched that up. And this is your strategic nutrition through the cycle. You do want to avoid caffeine on an empty stomach, like we said, and your late day caffeine. It's encouraged after food. You want your phase awareness use, so you want to use it when you know that you're not going to have that really big rebound, and you want to replace it with something when you're dysregulated, right? So you need good caffeine timing through your nervous system. As I've hit, that's 90 minutes after you wake up, ideally. Obviously, I'm not perfect on this. Not everybody can be perfect on this, but just try to wait for as long as you can so that you can get some of that balance back.
Cool. Oh, sorry. So, when we break this down, right, we try to keep it simple, but if we can help regulate these different cycles that we have, it's going to put us in the best position. So, when we look at daily habits, we want to start with circadian alignment. A lot of that comes down to, honestly, just light exposure, when you see light and what type of light you see. I myself could be a little bit better about not checking my phone right away, but if we wake up and let the natural light be the first thing that we see, it's going to increase mitochondrial production, which is going to give you more energy throughout the day, but it's also going to start your day in a parasympathetic mode too. It's crazy that even just the first thing you see and the first thing you eat will set the tone for your body the entire day. So if we're just a little bit more mindful for normal sun and the first bite you eat of food being something protein, then your body's gonna be in a fat burning state and you're gonna have higher energy throughout the day, which is crazy. And I even tested that. One of our former colleagues is really big about diabetes treatment and insulin sensitivity and things like that. Even if you have a meal that say is protein and carbs, if the first bite is protein, you'll still have the same effect. And the second bite is say rice, your body's still gonna be in that fat burning state for the whole day. So simple things like that. Monthly, obviously we're talking about, again, honoring our cycle and the different energetic needs we need throughout our cycle, whether that be eating, exercising, going in public, out of public, things like that. Ongoing, we are chiropractors, so shameless plug. Spinal and nervous system care. This has been so key for both of us. This is why we do what we do, because if your nervous system is regulated, all these things can work. Again, if it's not, you can be putting all these different inputs into you and it doesn't go anywhere. Our previous boss used to have a picture of if your nervous system isn't regulated. They did I think it's a barium study of supplements not even digesting in someone's stomach. So you're taking these supplements and they're just sitting there. And we like to say the most expensive supplement is the one that doesn't work, right? Because what's the point of that? And then continuous, especially the most important thing for women, is a lot of our energy comes from joy, helping others, proper fueling of ourselves, and again, like helping our communities too. So, like we talked about, there's a couple things you can do to kind of work on these things, right? Morning, we talked about that. Evening, a wind down ritual is really important, especially because if we go to bed in that higher stress state, odds are we're going to wake up in that state. I myself, I don't know about you guys, have crazy dreams no matter what. So they're either really good dreams or really bad dreams, depending on the mood I'm in. And it can make a big difference as to what I'm doing at night, right? If I'm watching my favorite kind of murder mystery show at night, guess what I'm dreaming about, guess how I'm sleeping, and guess how my next day is. I've tried it a lot and it hasn't got better. So winding down, right? Making sure that the last light we see is good light. Trying to minimize those more harsh blue lights and things like that. And the nice thing is there's so many settings on our phones now that you can go into more of that red light mode and stuff like that at night too. Being cycle aware, right? The more that you tap into all these things, your intuition goes through the roof. And then you don't even have to think about what cycle am I in, what am I doing. You don't have to systematize it as much. You know, okay, today I need to go to yoga versus CrossFit, right? Or today I need to rest, or today I need a mental health day. You are able to know those things. The amazing thing about being a woman is we're so intuitive because we need to know what everyone is going on around us, right? We need to know these little tiny cues. Well, when you can know that in yourself, your health really skyrockets. Making sure we stabilize our nutrition for what we need. And again, maintaining our lovely nervous system. So I just want to talk about a couple things. I actually recently had an experience with this, right? But it's really important to realize the season that we're in. If we are in one of those higher stress seasons, say we're taking care of a parent, we have a sick child, things like that, everything seems to be out of control. It's so important to lock in on just a couple things. Increasing protein and down-regulating carbs is going to help you stay more mentally focused. Increasing your sleep, really prioritizing yourself and rest is going to be huge. I know as women, again, I'm not a mother, but I know mothers don't sleep. Our office manager just had a baby and she's like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to sleep again. Reducing stimulants, like you said, the whole coffee thing irks me because I am a caffeine lover, but reducing stimulants makes a huge difference. Increasing parasympathetic outputs or inputs. So watching what we're consuming, right? Social media is huge. News is huge. When I go home to see my parents in Colorado, they're big news people, and I'm like, you guys live in this constant anxiety just because you can't turn off the TV, you know? Like, we turn off the TV, what's going on in your life to make you that stressed, right? Increasing your spinal care frequency, this is a big thing. When we have people come into our office, say they just experienced a death, they found out some really bad news, we say it is that much more important, you need to be in this office more times a week. Make yourself a priority because again, if you can't handle these things, what help are you to other people? And strength is adaptability, right? So we like to say, we know how strong you are with how adaptable you are, or how your nervous system can basically take something that goes on in your life and make it a blip rather than a mountain, right? We need to be able to handle these things that happen on our day-to-day.
Now, when we talk about joy, we can consider it a feeling, right? But it's actually a biological strategy. Bringing more joy into your life physically changes your brain chemistry, right? It lowers your cortisol, it improves your dopamine levels, right? It also increases your oxytocin, enhances your estrogen receptor sensitivity. It's literally parasympathetic training for your body. The more joy that you're experiencing, the more resilience that you're building from things that can put you into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? It's so key that we take the joy that's in our lives and we magnify that, we focus on that, we think about those things, because it will change your physiology over time. So there's some small micro joy practices, right? Once again, sunlight. This has been something that's been really big. We've hit on this multiple times. Being in the sun, right, creates vitamin D, which is one of the foundational hormonal substrates for building all of your hormones, right? Music, right? Who doesn't have a favorite jam that every time it plays they smile, right? I know I definitely do. Movement is super key. Sometimes moving your body in weird ways just makes you smile, just because you're like, okay, I feel like a nerd right now, but it's kind of fun. Touch, oxytocin release. Did you know that 20 seconds of a hug with another person is enough to boost your immune system? When's the last time you hugged somebody for 20 seconds? I know that personally for me, after like 3 or 4, I'm like, all right. Let's get sober. But really just like letting your walls down and letting that person in, being in their field of energy is enough to change the whole neurophysiology of your body. And I think that's just super amazing. Your social connection is so key. Being able to go outside with your friends, talk about things, open up, express, share your experiences. We talked about that being one of the universal needs. And then also your creative expression. Joy is literally fuel for your performance. The happier that your life is, the more that you're able to do all of these brilliant and amazing things, right? Look at the gold medalist that just came out for figure skating, right? The attitude that she shows up with on a daily basis, she is unapologetically herself, right? She shows up cheesing, right? And then she's like making Mac Dre references, like when she's going in for her photos. That's joy, right there.
Oh, sorry.
Cool, it's all good.
So we talked a little bit about how this all ties into chiropractic, right? Because that is what we really focus on at the end of the day. Go ahead and go to the next. So we talk a lot about brain-body connection. It goes to your spinal cord. I'm just going to give you guys kind of the quick 30-second intro of what we do, what we talk about. Now, what's important to us is that we know that the human body can heal every single ailment, disease. There's been nothing in history that the body has not come back from at least one individual, right? And the power in order for your body to heal, it starts in your brain, goes down through your spinal cord, right? And it goes out through your nerves to every cell, tissue, and organ in your body, right? In order for your lungs to breathe, your heart to beat, for your stomach to digest food, we need that pathway to work, right? And vice versa. These organs communicate back to your brain so your brain can regulate the different systems through your nervous system. Now, one thing that no one ever talks about, I went to, my undergrad was in pre-med, and no one had ever made the reference that this whole entire system is encased in these bones called your spine, right? So it makes sense that as we're going about our daily lives and these bones move out of place, I know that none of us look like this on a computer ever, right? Over time, what that does is it puts pressure on these nerves, and what we end up seeing over time is what we call dis-ease, right? The lack of ease within your body. And over time, that develops in different ways. Your thoracic spine, for instance, I know most of us as women hold all of our stress all right up here, right? They like to say that women are like carrying the house on their back, right? Well, your thoracic spine, which is this part right here, is where your sympathetic system, which is your stress response system, is all housed. So as we get all tight and clenched up and we're trying to protect everything, what is the impacts that's having on our body, right? The upper cervical region in your spine, which is right under your skull. If you guys ever get tension headaches right under your skull, or you feel a lot of tightness in there, if you get vertigo, tinnitus, this is all in that area, allergies, and it affects your blood pressure. There's actually only 2 places in the human body where your blood pressure is regulated. It's in the arch of the heart itself and the very first cervical vertebra in your spine. So your spine overall is a stress processing structure. So what this looks like, right, and this is just a couple little checks here to say, are we stressed, right? How is our forward head posture? This is one of the biggest things we measure in our office, is how far over is our head going like this, right? We do this for long enough and we get the cute little humpback thing going on here. None of us want that, right? Tight traps, right? If you feel like your shoulders are always up like this. The other day I was watching a video and it said, relax your shoulders, and I thought I was relaxed. And I'm like, oh, nice. Feels pretty good. Jaw tension. If you can consciously right now relax your jaw. Your jaw is in tension. If you're grinding your teeth at night. Shallow breathing. One of the things we talk about a lot, in order for this spinal system to work, it needs 2 things, walking and breathing. And I'm like, that's what us as Americans don't like to do, right? So we need to be breathing more. We start seeing digestive issues, autoimmunity. A lot of these conditions, again, are just from the lack of ease in your nervous system. Cold hands or feet or temperature regulation. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like in the winter I'm permanently cold and in the summer I'm permanently hot. but all this different mechanical stress actually amplifies this neural stress. And now we're not just talking about pain, but we're talking about every other organ and system in your body. So what we do see when we get our spine aligned, and we'll talk about exactly how we do that when you guys come into the office, is that your heart rate variability increases. This is kind of how your body manages stress, is your HRV. If those of you who have Apple Watch, Whoop, things like that, it'll show you kind of what your recovery is. Reduce sympathetic dominance. You spend more of your time in that more rest, digest, chill state. Things that come at you don't throw you off. You sleep better. Improve menstrual regularity. Periods should not hurt, and you shouldn't have mood swings if everything is regulated. Enhance stress resilience and neurological recalibration. Well, one thing we really try to stress is that pain is actually the last thing that we focus on. Pain is the very, very, very last sign to signal to you that something is wrong. Again, we were designed to be intuitive creatures, and society brings us out of that. Only 20% of our nerves feel pain. So by the time we have gotten to the point where we're in pain, things are going wrong other places, right? And that's why we always say it's not about how you feel, it's about how you function, and that's what we really strive to do within our office.
Cool. So yeah, just to touch on what we just talked about, right? So one thing that I've noticed in my 6 years of clinical experience, for the last 2 years, I was the lead doc for the San Jose Sharks, right? They're the hockey team. And we all know that hockey is a pretty violent sport. People are getting their heads slammed into walls, literally taking punches out there. And guess who the hardest population is to adjust due to stress is in our office? Moms. That means that being a mom is a full-time contact sport. Seriously. So when we're looking at health as a holistic approach, right, we start with the core, chiropractic, because if you don't have a functioning nervous system, and even beyond that, if we don't have these 45-degree curves that are supposed to be present in the spine, then your spinal cord, which is supposed to sit nice and relaxed inside that canal, is going to have additional tension. Now, the tension that controls if the system that controls every aspect of your body is under tension, then what's the rest of the body going to be feeling, right? Tension, right? So if somebody goes to their medical doctor and they say that, you're having these liver issues, right? What are they going to offer you? You got two options usually, drugs or surgery, right? But how often are they saying, well, let's check the superior mesenteric nerve that actually goes in here and controls all of your thoracic organs and see how that's functioning. See how your brain is actually going down that pathway and communicating with your liver or your kidneys or your reproductive system, right? These are things that we see all the time in our office. People think that they're miracles, but really your body is just restoring to the function that it should have, right? And this is our baseline, this is our core. Once we start doing the basics, then we can start addressing some of the other things, right? When we talk about mindset, that's something that Dr. Sydney is really big on. He can definitely.
Yeah, so we're under a bigger conglomerate, which is called Maximize Living, and one of the most important things about Maximize Living is we teach what we call the 5 essentials. So he talked about core chiropractic is obviously where we start, because if our nervous system is not regulated, these other things don't matter. But as you can hopefully tell, him and I love doing talks. This is a picture of us doing a talk in our office, but we do these at least monthly so that we can get people information on nutrition, what your nutrition needs are specifically for you. Mindset, again, huge one in our office, where I would say most people end up in there because of stress, not anything physical, not anything in their life. Oxygen and exercise, what is the proper way to move your body? We did a class last night about how to find an exercise that works for you and your needs. And minimizing toxins too. Unfortunately, the way that America has kind of been designed to this point is there's toxins everywhere, right? And it gets exhausting to try to figure out what is helping and what is hurting us. So as we see it, if we get all of these things taken care of, again, your body was designed to heal without the need for these other things, without medication, without surgery, and we see miraculous results every day.
Yeah, and one thing to touch on as far as minimizing toxins goes, just for your awareness, there are over 100,000 different chemical compounds that have been introduced to our society that weren't around 200 years ago. and only about 20% of those are tested for how they affect people, right? And even less than that, considering that we're talking about the difference between male and female physiology. So if we're not detoxifying our bodies, those things are gonna stick around, they start to accumulate, and they're gonna alter how your body functions. That's why it's so important that we get this information out. That's why we were so excited when Zahir offered to have us come today so that we could share some of the things that we're passionate about and things that will help you improve your lives over time.
So this is one of my favorite slides. So this is one of the things that we do in our office. We call these there's two different scans. This in particular is a surface EMG scan. So a lot of people, for lack of better words, get dragged into our office, right? Say, it usually is the wife that starts first, they drag their whole family, right? And the husband comes in, big macho man, I have no pain, I have no issues, blah, 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 right? Well, our surface EMG scans basically shows your panties, for lack of better words, right? While you're thinking that you're feeling so great and you're conquering the world, right? These scans help us to see how much stress your body's actually under. Now, what's interesting, I did a new patient exam the other day. One of the wives that's been getting great care in our office finally got her husband in, and he sat in his appointment and told me there's absolutely nothing wrong with him. He feels great, he's never had pain, he loves his posture, everything's good. He's doing this to avoid a fight, right? Well, this is his scan, this middle one right here. For reference, his stress score should be about 100. This is a 2,000. So what that means is there is so much stress being held in his body. How do you think that's impacting, say, his organs over time? How do you think this is affecting his digestion, the way he communicates with the world? This basically tells us, just point blank, you're living your life through a sympathetic lens, right? Through a high stress lens. And that's going to affect the outputs of what happens. Couple different things here. I also want to say this scan right here. So when we read these, we don't want to see black or red. Red means that it's way too high. Black means it's way too low. This scan right here, there's a lot of black going on in the low back. For this person, it makes sense because they're actually paralyzed from about the bra line down. But the interesting thing is I see this exact same presentation in people that sit at a computer all day. Is that sitting over a long period of time actually turns off the muscles to the same extent of someone who's actually paralyzed.
Yeah, and we can actually interpret these scans and figure out why your body is having pain, right? So we can see someone right here, right? And we know exactly what you're feeling. It's like, oh, you're getting pain down into the left hip, right? Maybe some numbness or tingling in the foot. And they're like, oh, how'd you know? I'm like, because I'm a magician. But no, it's because your scan is literally telling us that these muscles aren't functioning. Your body's not getting the information that it needs to from your brain. So everything in this region is just kind of flailing around in the wind, right? And your body is constantly guessing, which uses up extra energy, will eventually cause a degeneration and cause pain. So when somebody comes into our office and they get their adjustment, we use a fancy tool called an arthrostim, and that can help us activate some of these different musculoskeletal pathways to not only take your body out of pain, yes, that is an important part of what we do, especially from the patient's perspective, but to boost the function of how their body is working. And ultimately, once the function improves, the pain itself is going to disappear because your body no longer needs that signal. So, with that being said, we've got some key takeaways, right? Your biology is not a limitation, right? Your cycle is a performance map that lets you know where we need to be, what kind of input we need, what we need to be eating at that time, and the things that we should be doing. Once you follow that map, you get a step-by-step process that will take you from stress to strength, right? So regulation precedes optimization. You can't be functioning at your best if you're not mapping and hitting the basics, right? Stress isn't a weakness, it's a signal from your body, just like pain, right? It's not the thing that you should be most focused on, but it is something that we need to take into stock to see how we can change. Because once you start making those changes, your stress is ultimately going to reduce, but more importantly, your creativity, right? Your energy levels, your social connections, your impact on the world is going to start to raise, okay? And then ultimately, strength is built through alignment. It's not forcing the situation, It's working to what you already have and optimizing what's been provided, right? We clearly have very different strengths, right? But the way that our office works, right? The reason why it's so amazing to have two doctors that are looking at your nervous system is because the things that I'm good at that she might not be working at as well, right? Inversely, she has things that she's amazing at that I can't even touch on, right? And you have two amazing sets of eyes, soon to be followed by a third, that are going to be able to examine your nervous system and work with you so that your body can make that transition. And lastly, as we said, we do have an offering. We call this our invitation to heal, right? So if you feel like you're stuck in burnout, right, or hormonal chaos, constantly feeling tired, fatigue, physical pain, maybe some emotional volatility, you don't need more discipline. This doesn't mean that you need to add a whole lot more for the system or to the system. And fun fact, chiropractic isn't about adding anything. As chiropractors, we don't heal, we don't treat,